Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones went a little crazy, Landon, on 105.3 The Fan this morning. We'll break it all down on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool, a very not upset Landon McCool.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I'm pretty upset having watched this tape, but yeah.
We'll get there. Not as defiant as what Jerry Jones was this week on his weekly appearance on 105.3 The Fan. If you haven't gotten a chance to listen to it yet, it's on YouTube. Go listen to it. But the big takeaway is Jerry Jones is upset, and he was not liked. He did not like some of the questions that were asked. He was pretty defiant about his team. He thinks this is still a very good football team that can be a contending team in the NFC. What did you take away from Jerry's comments?
Well, first of all, I saw a lot of rumors on Twitter and elsewhere that Jerry had said that he wasn't going to make any major changes. That's not what I heard at all. It sounded like Jerry was willing to change the question askers out right then and there on the air. So whatever trade that he can get for the radio personalities, I'm sure he's willing to pull the trigger on that one. Look, I mean, this is it's embarrassing. Like, and look, I don't know whether I fall into the camp of, this is Jerry with the mask slipping off and finally kind of, being frustrated and being defensive and being a jerk on the radio, or if this is Jerry once again using the negative press towards the Cowboys to spin it into some sort of media attention that we're all, feeding into again by buying up and listening to his talk. It doesn't really matter. Just as a Cowboys fan, it's embarrassing, especially when you look at the results. Again, I have prescribed for a long time to stop listening to Jerry Jones because it's frustrating. It's infuriating. It's not necessarily great information when you get it. But I think, hearing what he had to say and the fact that he went out and said the things he had to say when Cowboys fandom is in the state that it currently is, I think it was just disrespectful. And it was just, for the one guy who doesn't have to be ever held accountable for anything, for him to kind of be automatically defensive on a very softball question. I just think it shows, a guy who is unwilling to answer questions, whether that's an unwillingness because he's trying to spin it into some media, gold for himself, or unwillingness because he's defensive because he knows he's done a poor job. It doesn't really matter. It's just generally embarrassing to have your general manager and owner go out there and act like that.
I don't think Jerry Jones is dumb, right? And he knows he's got a 3-3 football team that's on a bye coming off a really bad loss. So rather than having the national media talk about how bad his team looked on Sunday, now it's about Jerry Jones's comments, right? And I wish this wasn't the case, but as soon as it happened, I turned on ESPN, and what are they talking about? Jerry Jones's comments, right? So they eat it all up, right? So now the attention is off the performance on Sunday, and it's back on Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, which is exactly what Jerry Jones wants, right? Rather than us talking about the Ravens having a really nice win or Tampa Bay's comeback, we're talking about the 3-3 Cowboys. So I understand why Jerry does it. It works. I just think longtime Cowboy fans are sick of it.
Yeah. Again, it's like you're not doing this for Cowboys fans. And that's the kind of the gross part about this is that, again, it doesn't really matter what his motivation is, like whether he's doing that for, like you just described and like we just talked about, or whether he actually did get upset and, it doesn't matter because ultimately the result is the same, is that people that actually care about the team or that are actually following the team on a day-to-day basis, this is not for them. So all this is just piling more embarrassment on top of your team outside of what you experienced on Sunday afternoon. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's something for the national audience. It's something for the clickbait, audience, for Cowboys fans, for people that actually follow the team. It's just deeply, deeply disheartening.
I also think one of the reasons why Jerry was so defiant is because I think he knows he's wrong, right? Like, generally, you don't see Jerry get this way unless he knows something is wrong and the team is in a bad place, right? I just don't think he's got a lot of answers. Like, the host really pressed him on, like, hey, why didn't you do more this offseason to get this roster ready? And he did not like that line of questioning. He's like, who's out there now that I'm going to sign? And I believe it was Shan that said, well, what about this offseason? Why didn't you make moves then? And that got him really upset. So I think Jerry knows he's in a tough spot now. Like, the performance on the field isn't what the Cowboys expected. Cowboy fans wanted them to do more in the offseason than they did. And now you're seeing the results play out on Sundays.
Yeah, I mean, to see him fall back to like the same old kind of, oh, what about the Super Bowls I won? Like, Jerry, I mean, do you notice that no other GM has that luxury? That's because every other GM that has won the Super Bowl has either continued to be the GM because they're doing a great job, or they got fired 25 years ago when they went 2-12 or whatever it was in 1998. You know, it's like, this whole idea that, like, you know, his past deeds continue to kind of, buoy him through this era. Like, nobody else has that luxury because everyone else got fired for doing a bad job at some point.
Yeah.
And Jerry Jones, the GM, would have been fired 20 times in the last 30 years if he was a GM for any other team.
And he keeps referencing, everybody thought I made a bad deal when I bought the Cowboys back, in the late 1980s, right? You're right. You made the right decision then, but making a right decision 30 years ago doesn't mean that now you're making all the right decisions, and the moves that you're making now will end up being right because everybody else thinks they're wrong. Jerry
Glanville said it best, man. NFL is not for long, except for unless you're Jerry Jones, right? Everybody else faces consequences and the way the results matter and have an effect on their job, security, except for Jerry Jones. So, listen, maybe just be quiet and like pipe down, and then maybe, or apologize, or hand the GM job to somebody else. Like, if you want to be just the owner and face owner level consequences, which is none, that's fine. Then have somebody else go out there and make those decisions and then stand up and have to defend them. But don't pretend like, this offseason's lack of movement is wiped away because of something that you did 30 years prior to this.
Yeah. This will probably be one of the only times that we cover Jerry Jones's comments, because you and I have both basically come to the conclusion it's just not worth listening to it, because, and even was it CD or was it I think it was Dak Prescott that says, I just don't care what Jerry says in the public. Media. And it's right, because a lot of times what Jerry says in the public is not actually what he means. It's not actually what he's telling you face to face. So we should take it at that value, right? Take it with the tiniest grain of salt possible.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate is what it is, because it's turning the knife in the true fans. Like, there are actual true fans of this team that love this team. And what Jerry Jones is doing to those folks, like with the bad team, and then the comments on top of that is just beyond the pale point.
So I was talking to somebody yesterday about kind of this whole season, right? I think Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones could have avoided a lot of this anger,
animosity.
If they would have just been upfront about the plan, right? Like,
yes, I agree. Absolutely.
You and I have kind of been calling this a soft rebuild, right? Like, I don't think they wanted to put any more money and assets into this version of the team. Now, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb contracts, they believe those are like long-term solutions, but they didn't want to spend more draft picks and more money on this current version of the team. And I think they're looking ahead to like 2025, 2026 as their window. But when they say they're all in and they don't really come out and say that plan, it just gives a lot of mixed messaging. And I think fans are expecting them to be a Super Bowl caliber team. And I don't think they believe that at all.
And this is exactly why when we talked about all offseason, right? All offseason, we talked about how the mismatching timelines of the team building of this team, it doesn't make any sense. Your feet aren't matching what your lips are doing, right? And now we're coming to a moment in the road where that is being laid bare by the results, right? And Jerry doesn't have a good answer because he lied to you 4 months ago about how serious this team was about, investing in this season. So, I mean, Jerry made a terrible bed. Now he's going to lie in it. We all saw this. I mean, you and I saw this coming from August at this point, as far as the idea of them kind of doing a soft rebuild and then hoping that they have enough success that the Cowboys fans kind of just continue to keep their interest in this season. But honestly, I think you're seeing like a lot of Cowboys fans have already kind of moved on to the draft, have abandoned this team. It's way too early, but I mean, at the same time, it's like, I don't blame them because of the way that their GM is behaving. Like, he doesn't have any interest in trying to make this season salvageable, and they're not really doing much about it.
All right, let's talk about something actually way more depressing. The all-22 tape from Cowboys loss to the Detroit Lions. We will dive into that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. We've got a fantastic slate of NFL action in week 7. The Cowboys are off, which means you can just sit back, enjoy the games, watch Chiefs 49ers in the afternoon, and go place all of your bets on FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awards winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get action on states including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and does not return for the second, PrizePicks keeps your lineup alive. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Go download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are breaking down the all-22 film from the Cowboys' 47-9 loss to the Lions. Lane, I want to start on the offensive line because they got beat up in this game and they did not play well. This was, I think, pretty easily Zach Martin's worst game of his career. I'm not sure if anybody outside of Tyler Smith played well on the offensive line.
No. And I think, it had a cascading effect without a doubt throughout the whole offense. Martin just doesn't look right. It's not just physically. There was a I was looking at my notes. There was a play in which I think it was the first sack, or no, it was a play where he got called for holding, where they ran a twist inside with Hutchinson coming inside and looping around, and Martin just never saw it. And by the time he did see it, he reacted late and he got, he grabbed him, and that was the holding call that got called on him. And there were a couple of different plays in the game where it just felt like he looked confused by what he was seeing, or just not certain about what he was seeing. And then, on top of that, he didn't look physically right. I mean, I love my guy, Ali McNeil. He was my pet cat coming out, but to see what he did to Zach Martin several different times was not fun. He really, really gave Martin everything that he wanted to have. And then on top of that, you've because of the switch in the lineup for the offensive line, you have a pair of 2 young offensive linemen working on that left side with the center and the left guard. And, much like they were attacking Zach Martin, it felt like the Lions were doing a lot to have their defensive ends loop back inside, specifically from Hutchinson's side. It feels like they were doing, from the offensive right side, these kind of twists and stunts and loops that were getting the defensive end attacking the middle of the pocket. And it really felt like Beebe and Bass were struggling to kind of pick those up and sort them all out. There was another time when you saw Lipke was the pass protector up front, and he was having to come across the formation, and they sent an A-gap blitzer, and he picked up the right guy, but he didn't see the looper coming around. And, so it's stuff like that where it's like, it's not that they are necessarily being physically, though with Zach Martin's situation, it was a little bit physical. It wasn't like they were being physically beat up or thrown around or tossed around. It's like they were getting fooled a lot, and then they couldn't recover from that stuff. I think this is just a situation where you have a lot of inexperience. You aren't necessarily helping the situation by moving guys around to kind of, accommodate for the best five. I think that one of the real issues with this offensive line at this point is just, a lack of continuity. I understand that BB has been in the center spot since starting of week one. I think Guyton, has been trying to get better week to week, but, they've faced just a murderer's row of defensive lines. And I think that they're making a mistake by trying to shuffle that around and move that around a little bit, when what they ultimately need is more time on task together to kind of sort this stuff out.
And it's not going to get easier, right? Like Terrence Steele's got Nick Bosa next week. They got Matt Judon after that. They got Jalen Carter coming up, and then it's Will Anderson and Denny Hunter. Like this is just the way that it is. You're going to have to play some really good pass rushes over the next couple of weeks. I think the biggest difference between last year and this year is just the play of the offensive line. They had three legit all-pro offensive linemen last year. Tyron Smith got all-pro votes. Tyler Smith got all-pro votes, and Zach Martin was an all-pro. This year, and again, just these are PFF grades. They're not gospel, but let me just read you where they rank among the offensive linemen. Tyler Guyton, 71 out of 78. Tyler Smith, 10 out of 73. Cooper Beebe, 29 out of 35 centers. Zach Martin, 24 out of 73 guards. Terrence Steele, 46 out of 78 offensive tackles. You have one player right now playing at an above average level, and that's Tyler Smith. Not to mention TJ Bass when he came in the game, Brock Hoffman last week when he had to play. This team needs their offensive line to be really good in order to win these shootout type of games, and they just haven't been.
Yeah, and again, I think it's like you said, it's two things. It's a talent question and it's a continuity question, right? And those are the two big things that kind of are the measurement of how good your offensive line is. And if you're not going to have a talented offensive line, then it's helpful to have a group that's played together for a long time, and vice, the other way around, right? Cowboys don't really seemingly have either of that. I think the talent thing is, going to get better week to week as your younger players continue to get better. And the continuity part will as well, but there is no easy, quick fix for this. And I think that trying to we don't really know what the situation was with the offensive line as far as Guyton and whether that was a temporary situation for the left tackle injury or if that was a performance swap out.
Well, Jerry did mention that on the radio show. He said he just wasn't quite ready. They said he
good.
He didn't say exactly, but he said he just wasn't quite ready in this game. But we really like Tyler Guyton moving forward.
Okay, good. Because I just think that it would be a mistake. It would be piling mistake on mistakes to kind of try to move Guyton out there. They need reps. They need to get better. And you need to protect your investment. I don't think I think you and I talked about this off air. I don't think Guyton is playing so poorly that it's pull worthy. Right.
No,
you need to work through this and figure this out. So, but as it stands right now, the Cowboys offensive line just cannot, it's just overmatched, with a lot of these defensive lines that they're having to face. It's partially the schedule they're playing, but it's also partially that these guys are not improving at a rate that we had hoped. And it's, it's one of those things where you're just going to have to continue to take your lumps throughout the season.
Yep.
And again, which again points to the kind of mismatching timelines that this team has, right? Like if this is going to be a season long effort to kind of get this offensive line to where it needs to go, you know, if your hope is that it can be good for the playoffs, but that's a hope that it includes making the playoffs, which is not something that is by any stretch of the imagination guaranteed with this team playing the way it is.
The other thing they're missing on offense to help the offensive line, Landon, is they just don't have any outlet receivers where you can dump the ball for 3 yards and they're going to take it for 7. And that's Dak's kind of escape, right? They used to have that with Tony Pollard. They've had it with other players in the past. And I even think like Tom Brady made a comment about like, where's the Wes Welker or the Julian Edelman that can just get open really quick? So giving Dak like an easy pass or like a layup throw in the middle of the field. They just don't have that now. And it puts more stress on the offensive line. And I think you're seeing it have a big impact right now.
Yeah. And then, we'll talk about this more in the next section, but on top of that, even when they do get things blocked up and it looks correct in the run game or in the pass game, they're not getting a lot of production or good production from the players that you're relying on a normal case. That CeeDee Lamb was struggling. We'll talk about that more in the next section.
Let's talk about the stars, because this was not a great game from Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson. The list goes on and on. Dallas needs more from their stars. We'll talk about it next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I absolutely love Gametime. It's the only ticketing app that I use when I want to go to my favorite live events like football games or concerts or comedy events. Gametime now has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. There's so many awesome features on Gametime, but one of the things that I love is the panoramic view of your seats. I think I've told you guys before, but I like to sit in the end zone when I go to football games, but I don't want to be where the goalpost is blocking my vision. I either like to be right in the middle or off to the side a little bit. Gametime will give you a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. You think the Cowboys are in bad shape? Go listen to those 2. Jacksonville and Tennessee. Pretty rough there. Go check out the Locked On NFL podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Landon, let's talk about the superstars, because they, depending on the game, they've played well, but they have not played at the level that we need them to in order to win some of these big time games.
Yeah, absolutely not. And certainly not in this game. I mean, we've talked about this before. When Dak is bad, it's because his footwork is bad, right? And this was just the textbook of that, right? Like you just see him on that first interception where, first of all, he shouldn't have thrown the ball. Like, I mean, he was forcing into double coverage. He needs to confirm that guy is falling into the flat before trying to throw that ball. And then even if you're going to throw that ball, you got to throw it deeper and closer to the back end pylon. And he probably could have done that if he wasn't falling to his left when he threw the ball for absolutely no reason. Like instead of like, there's just too many times when he's got a clean pocket and his footwork is crazy. Like, it's just like, what are you like? He looks like he's falling and he's just like off platform for no reason. And it's fine if like I'm not going to comment on your footwork if you get the pass where it needs to go or you got the velocity where you needed it to be. But if you short a throw to the end zone and it gets intercepted by an underneath defender because you're falling off of 1 foot to your left and just kind of arming it, I mean, yeah, we're going to point that out, man. And on top of that, I mean, certainly isn't Dak alone, right? Like there are definitely times when Dak's making great plays. That one play where I think it may have been the play before that play, right? Where it's the fade to the corner of the end zone, right? Rico comes across the formation, absolutely destroys Aiden Hutchinson in a pass protection set. Dak steps up into a clean pocket, delivers a perfect fade to the corner. CD, you got to come down with that ball, man. Like that's touchdown. That's like, it's in a game where they didn't score any touchdowns, and that's like your first drive or second drive, right? You've got to come down with that. And Ferguson had a similar situation where Dak makes a great play, gets the ball out, it hits Fergie in the hands, and he doesn't come down with it, right? And we talked about this last offseason. This was something that Fergie needs to get better at, is these contested catches when the ball goes up, and he's got to come down with those. We just talked this whole last section about the offensive line and an inability to kind of consistently get things blocked up. But when things were blocked up, guys like Dak and CD and Ferguson and Zach Martin, he's another one of our superstars who did not play, had his worst game.
0.0 pass block grade according to PFF.
When those guys can't get it together to, like, you know, be at their not even at their best, just be minimally good, then you're going to lose the game in the way the Cowboys did, right? It's you know, Dak can play hero ball all he wants, but if the people on the other end of that aren't going to pull their weight, and Dak's going to have to press to kind of do this. Look, I mean, the more that the guys around him continue to like fail him, the more Dak is going to press, and the more Dak presses, the worse Dak gets. So they have got to figure out a formula where some of these players have got to figure out how to, you know, be more efficient. You cannot have all of your best players on offense all be terrible all at once. Like,
I want to mention,
really ugly to watch.
And not only just on offense, but on defense, right? Like, you're shorthanded on defense, right? This is a game where like Trayvon Diggs and Oso Digizua need to play awesome. And this was probably Trayvon Diggs' worst game I've seen him play, maybe of his career. Like, zero interest in tackling, got burned a couple times down the field. Oso Digizua did not create a ton of pressure against Jared Goff, got washed out in the run game. Like, it's going to be awfully hard to win when you have 5 or 6 stars and none of them play well.
Oso Digizua and Jake Ferguson, to me, are indicative of exactly what's happened with this team, where you needed both of those guys to take a big step up and to kind of take the next step in their play. And I feel like not only have they not taken a step, they may have each taken a slight step down from where they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, and we love Osa, but like, again, PFF grades are not the gospel, but like, he had a 77 grade last year, 51.1. He's one of the lowest graded defensive tackles in the league this year.
And Ferguson is a guy we talked about. He has broken 0 tackles so far this season. He has 0 touchdowns. He may be producing his yardage at a similar-ish, if like slightly behind pace from what he was doing last year, but the results are not the same. You could tell he's just not as dynamic as he was when he has the ball in his hands. He's not breaking tackles. And if you can't, like, you know, you say what you want about Jerry Jones, like, the expectation was that a lot of these guys that they invested heavily would at least take some steps forward. And to me, the only 2 efficient players on offense last Sunday were Rico Dowdle and Jalen Tolbert. And that's pretty sad state of affairs that those are the only 2 efficient players on your offense.
Yeah, and I think with Ferguson, it could be a couple of different things. He clearly put on muscle to try to be a full-time tight end because they knew he was going to block more. He got injured in week 1. I mean, he's not on the injury report, but I got to assume, like, when you suffer an early season knee injury, probably going to take some of your explosiveness away. So with Ferguson not creating after the catch, Jalen Tolbert not really being a separator, like somebody who has to win in contested catches, and then CeeDee Lamb, I don't want to say struggling, but not playing at the level that we saw last year, offense gets really hard.
I'll just add one more thing schematically. I've noticed that the refs just are not giving the Cowboys any DPI or holding calls at the top of their routes. Like, teams are just being physical with the Cowboys at the top of their stop routes. And again, for a team that's perpetually running stop routes,
which means you need to probably change up your game plan on offense.
Yeah, because
running that.
if you can't get the calls at the top of the routes, and that's, I mean, because that is part of the issue is you see these guys and they're getting once 5 yards is the cutoff, and you're seeing guys going 7, 8 yards with still being physical with our receivers. If you're not getting the calls, you can't just complain to the refs. You got to change your schematics to run something else to get your guys open, and they haven't yet. So,
and I don't think in San Francisco next week against the 49ers, you're suddenly going to get a bunch of those. I don't want to call them ticky-tack calls, but like judgment calls. Like you can't build an offense hoping that you're going to get judgment calls. This is where we need to see more crossing routes, more design pick plays to try to help these guys create separation, because I don't think they're going to be able to do it by themselves.
Yeah, and I don't think San Francisco is going to play a less physical brand of football on defense. So figure something out.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. We're going to do some more big picture stuff with the Cowboys later this week. We're going to do a rookie report on Friday. We'll get to your questions one day this week. So even on a bye week, it's a busy time around here at the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Go check us out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.